Hey, what is up, YouTube? Andrew Rooney here, full-time drummer and drum teacher based right here in Auckland, New Zealand. Today's edition of Drum Teacher Asks AI ChatGPT. I'm going to go a little bit controversial. People get fired up about this question, about this whole idea, this whole way of looking at music and drums. Some of you guys are going to get fired up, but I'm going to do it anyway. Here we go. This is how I'm going to word it. Is it a good idea to learn to read drum music? What are the pros and cons? Enter. Here we go. Oh, okay. I was wondering if it would go there with cons, but it has. Okay, let's get through this. Is it a good idea to learn to read drum music? What are the pros and cons? Learning to read drum music can be a valuable skill for drummers, but like any skill, it comes with its own set of pros and cons. So has it only done this because I asked for pros and cons? I wouldn't have done that otherwise, right? So that's all about how you word the question, I suppose. Here are some of the advantages and disadvantages of learning to read drum music. Pros: wider musical vocabulary. Being able to read drum music allows you to play a wider variety of musical genres and styles. You'll be able to interpret sheet music accurately and play pieces written by various composers. Okay, yep, I'll go along with that. Being able to read music allows you to play a wider variety of musical genres and styles. That bit I don't necessarily agree with. Anyway, let's carry on. 2, communication. Reading drum music allows you to communicate more effectively with other musicians. That's a good point, including composers, arrangers, and fellow band members. It helps ensure that everyone is on the same page, no pun intended, ChatGPT, when it comes to the rhythm and dynamics of a piece. That's a big one. That's a big one that people miss. Look, I'm pretty passionate about this topic. I'm going to save a lot of my input. I'm going to do a dedicated podcast, NZ Drummer Podcast. Check it out. I'm going to do a dedicated podcast episode on this and video talking all about reading, misconceptions, myths, and yeah, it's a bit of a can of worms, that one. Professional opportunities. If you're interested in pursuing music professionally, the ability to read drum music can open up opportunities in studio sessions, musical theatre productions, orchestras, and more. Many professional settings require musicians to be able to read sheet music proficiently. Yeah, that's a key one. So people will come at you with, oh, well, Buddy Rich didn't read. Oh, well, Alex DePardio, he can't read. Dennis Chambers can't read. They're pretty good. Are you saying you're better than them? They didn't need to read, then you don't need to read. It's like, but are you really going to sit there and compare yourself to Alex DePardio, Buddy Rich, and Dennis Chambers? Like, there are a lot more ways to skin the cat than just doing what they do. I don't ever believe you need to limit yourself. I also don't think... anyway, I'll save more of this rant for the actual episode, a dedicated podcast episode I do on it. Number 4, skill development. Learning to read drum music can enhance your overall musicianship. It challenges your rhythmic and sight reading abilities, which can lead to improved coordination, timing, and precision in your drumming. Yes. Okay. Cons. This is going to be interesting. Initial learning curve. Learning to read drum music can be challenging, especially if you're new to reading music. It takes time and practice to become proficient at reading rhythms and translating them into drumming patterns. Absolutely true. It's not easy. I mean, if it was easy, everyone would be able to read drum music, but they can't. It's not easy. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's easy. Number 2, less intuitive. Some drummers find that reading music can feel less intuitive than learning by ear or by watching others play. Drumming is a highly physical activity, and relying solely on sheet music might make it harder to connect with the natural flow of the music. Relying solely on sheet music. That's a myth. That's a misconception. And that's something that I will be clearing up in that podcast episode. That is going to happen. Hold me to it. Number 3, creative expression. Strictly adhering to sheet music can sometimes limit your creative expression. That's just bad reading though. Drumming involves a lot of improvisation and feel, and relying solely on written notation might hinder your ability to experiment and add your own flair to a performance. It's a great point, but that's just kind of being a bad reader. You know, if you can only read I see a lot of classical people do this. Number 4, real-world variability. Sheet music might not capture all the nuances of a performance. Drummers often need to adjust their playing based on the specific context, such as the venue, other musicians, and the mood of the performance. Sheet music can't always account for these real-time adjustments. Very, very nice point, and I totally agree. In conclusion, learning to read drum music can be a valuable skill for drummers, especially if you're interested in playing a wide range of musical genres and pursuing professional opportunities. However, it's important to recognize that it's just one tool in your musical toolbox. Many successful drummers combine their reading skills with ear training and improvisation to create a well-rounded approach to drumming. It ultimately depends on your personal goals and preferences as a musician. Brilliant. Absolutely perfectly summed up. Now, before I go on, this is not meant to be a big flex and me pumping up my own tires, but let's go back up to the pros. And I mean, maybe I'm biased confirming this because I'm a reader. I'm a teacher and a reader myself. And you kind of have to be a reader if you're going to teach. That's another part of this. Just before I get onto this point, being a teacher, if you did not read. Now let's back it up even further. Can you really be a professional musician in 2023 if you're not teaching at all? I suppose, although I would strongly argue that every famous drummer that you can name who is alive at the moment teaches to some degree or has some type of educational resource available. So you do need some theory and some reading in that respect. But let's have a look at this. Professional opportunities. And they've listed here studio sessions, musical theatre productions, orchestras, and more. Yeah. Look, I'm just going to put it out there. As always, I'm completely transparent and open on this channel with you guys. I'm not the best drummer in the world. Far from it. I know where I'm at. I know the best players in the country. I've spoken to, via my podcast and interviews, I've spoken to some of the best players in the world. I know that I'm not the best player in the world. And I've had a fantastic, amazing career that I'm just so grateful and thankful for. And in many ways, I've lived my dreams from drumming. Well, I certainly achieved all the goals I had with drumming. Now, I couldn't have done those without reading. So I'm talking about professional opportunities here. So the people that say, oh, well, Buddy Rich, he couldn't read, so you don't need to be able to read. And I don't need to be able to read because Buddy Rich didn't read. You are not Buddy Rich. And this is not 1950. If you were going to practice as much as Buddy Rich did from the age of 2, don't come at me with Buddy Rich didn't practice. Of course he practiced. That's ridiculous. Don't believe that stuff. If you're going to be that dedicated and perform, actually gig from the age of 2, like Buddy Rich did, Traps Boy Wonder, that's fine. You don't have to read. No one has to do anything. But if we're talking about having a professional career and you're going to say, nah, well, I don't want to read, which is negating reading gigs and basically negating teaching. So you're going to rely on your freakish ability to play the drums. I hope you're going to be practicing a lot. I really hope you're going to be putting in I mean, I'm not a freakish player, but at music school, I was putting in 80-hour weeks for 3 years, and I'm not a freakish player. Freakish level players practice and play way more than you think. Way more than you think. And as I say, I'm not that kind of player. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not that level player. I'm not an El Estepario Siberiano. I'm not going to put out an Instagram video and people are just going to be losing their minds at my stick tricks and how fast I can play and the crazy ideas that someone like that has. I'm just not that kind of player. So we all have different strengths. We all have different weaknesses. Being able to read and being able to sight read opened up a career and a world of paid professional work that I couldn't believe. And an amount of work that only someone who could read well could get. And you really differentiate yourself from a lot of other drummers because let's just say it, a lot of drummers don't read, and that's okay. A lot of drummers don't read, and an even smaller portion of the drummers who can read can sight read. Other words, just opening up a book and you read your way down it, or open up a song, the transcription, and you just read through the song. Not a lot of drummers can do that. I don't know what percentage-wise we'd be talking. 1%? I don't know. Not many could do that for a 3-hour gig. And I've done those kind of gigs. This is not a flex session. Don't worry. This is not a flex session. I'm just being honest and transparent here. I've done those gigs where I'm doing 3 hours of reading. And that's the gig. If you can't read, you can't do the gig. If you can't do the gig, you can't get paid. So if we're talking about professional opportunities, which is what got brought up here in the pros, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's a lot like thinking in your life that if you live in an English-speaking country, that you're going to be fine if you can't read English. That's the way I would look at it. It's not exactly like that, but it's a little bit like that, where it's like, yeah, but I can do this and that, and I don't need to be able to read. Well, if you can't read, what are you going to miss out on, And there's a lot of other benefits. I'm going to leave it there. This was actually really good. I might use some of this as a basis for an upcoming podcast or interview. And we're going to dig into reading. Guys, as always, these are my opinions. These are ChatGPT opinions. We differed on some things. We connected on others. I want to hear from you guys. Have me in the comments. Let me know, reading drum music. Is it important? What are the benefits? What are the pros and cons? Guys, take care. Until next time, keep chopping wood. Ciao.